Good morning. Good morning. It's Monday, the 6th day of Marché du Film, and I'm super happy to see still so much energy at the Marché. We're going to have a great morning. My name is Dan Salover, I'm head of Next. It's a pleasure to introduce our Insights morning, what we have dubbed it for the past 2 years. It's quite a critical time for the industry. I hope everyone agrees. And having best insights, both qualitatively, what our colleagues, what our peers are feeling, what is the temperature within the industry, and quantitatively, what does data show about our industry is extremely paramount for everyone. If you're a decision maker, a funder, a training program manager, an upcoming filmmaker, and etc. We need great insights to push forward at this critical moment of time. And for the past few years, that's why we put together this Monday. We'll start with, of course, the Nostradamus Report. It's the 12th edition, which I think will look at very interesting dynamics. It will look at reality, it will look at resistance, and having seen a little preview of what Johanna has put together for this year, I think there is very pertinent and very strong quotes that will resonate with everyone. After the Nostradamus Report, Crescena, which has been a 3-year horizon project, diving into more of the quantitative aspects of the film industry, will release its 2nd edition of the State of European Film. It's going to focus on how the markets are doing in terms of market performance, distribution opportunities post-COVID, the state of skills, a preview of ongoing work, as well as how producers are adapting to this new reality. So I hope we will be able to spend the next few hours here getting the best insights, put them all into your applications, what would be even better, and enjoy the morning. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it on to Josef.
So, good morning. My name is Josef Kullengård. I'm the head of industry at the Göteborg Film Festival, who's commissioning the Nostradamus Report annually, and I'm so happy that we are so many here, even though it's early hours still. Johanna have a lot of things on her heart to be shared with you, so I won't say that much. I just want to say thank you so much to Sten, to Guillaume, Jules, Philomene, the whole Next and Marché du Film team. I also have the great pleasure to say that we have a new project partner as well for the Nostradamus, which is German Films. So thank you so much for coming on board to support the project. And also thank you so much to our other project partners, which includes Lindholmen Science Park, BoostHBG, Kulturakademin, as well as the support from Creative Europe Media, Nordisk Film TV Fond, and the region of Västra Götaland. So I won't say anything more, but let's give it up for the woman of the hour, Johanna Koljonen.
Oh my God, thank you. No pressure. This is crazy. Now I have my notes here, and I have my clicker here, and if I forget to click, you will have to remind me. I apologize. Okay, so good morning. Thank you for coming. We're here today to present the 12th annual Nostradamus Report, which looks at the near future of the screen industries. Some of you will not know it at all and are just very confused now. The title this year is Reality/Resistance. Reality Resistance. I'm Johanna Koljonen. I'm a media analyst. And this work is commissioned by and done in close collaboration with the Göteborg Film Festival. This work is funded by Swedish and European impact multipliers who are all invested in different ways in resilient industry change. BoostHBG is a public innovation hub for the audiovisual industries in Helsingborg, Sweden. Lindholmen Science Park has a very similar function out of Gothenburg. Kulturakademin offers upskilling and education for professionals across the arts, and German Film supports international circulation. And with us, as always, are Creative Europe Media, Nordisk Film TV Fond, and region Västra Götaland. The greatest gratitude, as always, goes to our interviewees. This year they are 7, They represent public service drama commissioners, talent management, talent, film education, and professional training, audience development perspectives, and development funding. And also independent production. Will meet two of our producer interviewees after this talk. Thank you so much to all of them for their generosity and time. They are represented in this report by their quotes. This is very important. Anything that is not a direct quote, they should not be faulted for or held responsible for. That's all me and the team. In this presentation, there are also quotes, and those I have had to shorten a little bit to fit them on the slides. So if you feel provoked, maybe look them up in the report before getting angry. The download link will be at the end. The report is free as always. Yeah, so the whole theme is that we have to change our relationship to reality. So we're going to have to start by looking at reality, and I'm going to start at the hardest place in the world right now. I promise it's not going to be like this all through the talk, but we have to begin here. So Roman Powell tells us, I'm in the academy, and in my group, 20-something short films from Gaza were submitted this year by Palestine. There were images in them I wish I had never seen. But even with just their phones, people were trying to tell stories, not only of unspeakable suffering, but also about their dreams. That will also always exist somehow. You see, my voice is, I might not be able to do this. What is happening now in Gaza? What is happening now in Gaza is shameful, illegal, and cruel. What is about to happen may be worse yet. Our inability of stopping these genocidal atrocities will be a stain for the rest of our lives on all of us who have a public platform in the world today. And we fail in this regard about many things in the world. But we at least often can tell ourselves that we have the excuse that we don't really know what's going on. I don't think we have that now. We do know what's happening. We understand what is happening and why. And somehow we have still permitted ourselves collectively as a culture, as cultures, to behave as though these civilians who are dead and lost and displaced, and these tens of thousands of children who we know to be dead now, that they do somehow not count, that their humanity does not count. And filmmakers in the midst of this carnage are trying to tell stories about hope. I think we can do better as well. It is a stain on each of us forever that this has happened in our lifetimes. And it's not far away. And this is from a country where most of us know people from. I'm not going to predict the future very much today. I'll be talking about why that's very difficult. I will be projecting choices. But this might be the most urgent one, not because this has to urgently stop, but because the situation in the world is getting worse. This is going to be more usual, not less usual. And Gaza has revealed in us an enormous cultural and individual ability to rationalize and ignore human suffering. How do we act in the world? How do we live with ourselves? How do we make films about the human experience when reality hardens us against human experience? And I can't answer that question. I think that's sort of that's the theme of the report is, in some way, all of it is about this. How do we go on? And there's a paradox of perspective in the report and also in this session, because there's no appropriate balance. Civilians are being murdered. How the hell do we talk about independent film distribution? But we have to talk about independent film distribution. That's really important. And sometimes it means that we will sound completely heartless. And we're just going to have to live with this paradox for the rest of our lives. And also, like, what am I even trying here? Why are we trying to forecast the future when the whole report is about the technical reasons why right now forecasting the future is impossible? For instance, we are not in a rational policy environment as long as the Trump government is in charge in the United States. So the basic fundamental economic dynamics of the world don't behave in a normal manner. It makes it all very difficult. What are we doing? What should any of us be doing? That is the question of the day, that's the question of the report, and maybe also the question of the rest of our lives. And I mean, the simple answer is what we should be doing is the best we can. We shouldn't beat ourselves up about all the things we can't do, because maybe we haven't been able to do them. But we have to be very realistic about what we actually can do. And this actually also and especially applies to our own industry troubles. I think we in film, especially in Europe, I'm ashamed to say, have had something of a culture where we expect someone else to come and save us. We have problems. Government, help us out. But help is needed in a lot more places now. And I think when we are feeling powerless about the wider world, I'm sure there are things we can do there, but what we can definitely do, where we are definitely not powerless, is in our own industry. We can transform our work practices and our workplaces, and we can transform our industry. That is power that we do have, all of us. Each of us can make it more resilient and more relevant. And I think, in the end, solving those problems is an investment in the greatest platform on impact on the world that any of us will have. Don't feel bad about solving the industry's problems. That is how you are working for the world. Whenever there's a slide that looks like this, it's going to represent a chapter in the report. I'm now going to run through them far too fast. I should also maybe not have chosen this title because it's a bit of a tongue twister. But the first chapter is called From Reality Resistant to Resilient Resistance. It argues that our industry has historically been somewhat reality resistant, which can be an enormous strength, and often is. But that it is now also necessary to stop denying reality so that we will be able to resist its outcomes. Just starting with the situation of the film and TV industries, if you zoom in, it's objectively terrible in the sense that the commissioning crunch is continuing. There are enormous mismatches in multiple ways between different phases of the value chain. I'm not sure that the producers are too many, which we sometimes hear, nor even sort of that the films are too many. I mean, it's a complicated thing. I did claim that last year, and I still stand by it. But it's complicated, right? The production volumes are not in proportion to what the rest of the system can currently sustain. At the same time, obviously, yes, like we are not working in the mines. We're probably fine. The reason we are so many and that we are making so much is that production industries all around the world have grown and matured in capacity and skill during the last decade. Operating in a more volatile environment, as we and other sectors will for the rest of our lives, will require totally new levels of adaptability and resilience. And we need to have mental and financial margins to sort of handle the curveballs that the world is throwing at us. For instance, this example here on the screen is, well, there's a war in Ukraine that causes inflation. In a completely unrelated market, suddenly a significant portion of a project's already committed funding disappears because of the inflation. The value of it disappears. Now, of course, that is nothing, again, compared to how the people of Ukraine and its film industry are affected. It's okay, we can feel both things at the same time. It's a huge problem, nevertheless. And this kind of thing will keep happening over and over again. And by this kind of thing, I mean every kind of thing. Maybe your co-production partner is in Valencia and their computers and offices are swept away in the floods. Maybe forest fires in Sweden will stop outdoor shoots for the exact months you are supposed to be in production. And this chapter argues that the exact qualities of optimism and agility which are necessary to work in film, you all have these qualities or you wouldn't have made it into this room. That's also what is needed to manage the world in which we live now. But we also have to actually use those skills. And possibly one of my favorite quotes in the whole report, and I mean this has a wider context, but Tamara Tatishvili says, there's nothing wrong with a panel, but do we really need them in these quantities? Our industry attracts opinionated, articulate people. Our challenge is translating those skills into actionable professional practice. That's my so anyway, and I say this as somebody who has totally scheduled a panel for after my own talk. So in summary, film storytelling has a paradoxical relationship with reality. It escapes reality, but it also makes reality clear. And similarly, film people have to be both shrewd realists and in complete denial of our odds. Like, it's impossible to get a film made, as you know. So you have to be in denial, but you also have to be a shrewd realist. And we just need to adjust that balance a little bit, and we need to turn these skills, both of which are good, to the project of our resilience as individuals, companies, organizations, and as a sector, not just the individual film project. One world, different woes. It's easier to say that you are including everyone or that you're neutral and promote a plurality of voices when you wake up every morning in a country with mostly uninterrupted social political development. It's very difficult when you wake up in Belarus, Ukraine, Palestine, Afghanistan, or many other territories where bombs are falling and civilian lives are taken away. Then you sit on a panel at some film market with colleagues who question why you might feel hesitant to include the voice of a political enemy. It's because in real life that is very complicated and extremely painful. This quote offers up one example of a central challenge that we will be meeting again and again and again going forward, that our experiences in a room like this will be increasingly very different, and very many more of us than before will have had experiences over the next decades of crisis and loss. And this has two implications. One is about the interpersonal level. All the studies about our workplaces and work cultures, and we have covered them in previous years, and you can find a lot of that on our website. All of these studies suggest that we in film and television are still pretty terrible even at handling the power imbalances that are inherent in the industry, and the differing effects that this has and the extreme stress it has on our co-workers and ourselves, a stress which is harder depending on if you have a less privileged starting point. We have started and have done great structural work with safety for everyone and changing the situation of underprivileged minorities. That's great, but we are still learning. And as we are learning, more and more people are bringing different kinds of experiences to work, experiences that affect them a lot. And I think also on the organizational levels, we need to practice flexibility more. How do we step up and take over when someone suddenly, for like a really good reason, can't do their job? Well, now you're thinking, oh, I can't take on somebody else's job. I'm already doing two people's jobs. Yes, that's not resilient. Like then we don't, that's not going to work. How do we, as for instance, funders, handle a project's unexpected setbacks? Again, not their fault, but something may happen that makes them not able to follow the rules. Do we take their funding away? How do we create professional work cultures with place for empathy and respect without losing the ability to deliver and be professional with each other? And I think here we have to learn from each other. In the next 3 to 5 years, this industry will resist democratic backsliding or be implicated in it. Liberal democracy is now the least common regime type in the world, with just 29 countries living up to the definition, according to the Wiedem Institute, which is the scorekeeper of these things. These numbers are from last year. I think with the development in the United States, maybe that number is now 28. There are more autocracies than democracies. Freedom of expression is worsening in 44 countries, up from 35 countries just 3 years earlier. 45 countries are currently undergoing a process of autocratization, compared to just 25 countries in 2025. And again, the US, I think, is not included here. So in just 5 years, the number of countries where autocratization is happening has almost doubled. And once autocratization gets going, there's about a 50-50 chance for whether the democracy will survive or not. Actually, it's less than half for a democracy to survive if it starts out as a democracy. Often autocratization often starts in places where the democracy isn't very strong to begin with, and then it just gets worse. But we also know historically that about half of the autocratization attempts have led ultimately to better democratic development. And I was very happy to see a Brazilian interviewee from this report from an earlier year in this room. Brazil was in a very dark place just a few years ago, and the situation is better. We can change these things, but they're not going to change themselves. We are in this fight whether we want to or not, because meaning attaches itself to stories. I'm not saying that we should, and the report doesn't argue that we should make a lot of political content. It's just we have to remember that it is political regardless. In fact, I would argue for the opposite. I argue for that we should all keep making the complex stories, and that is a way of fighting dehumanization and fighting polarization, is to keep those perspectives and individual humanity alive with our viewers. At the same time, the numbers are dire, and we have to remember that no country is safe. And this chapter contains some quite practical advice about how to start thinking about that as a company, especially whether you're a production company or like a big funding institution. How do we think about this? if you are now living in a young democracy, or you and your family have fled an authoritarian system, you will probably actually have pretty good instincts about how to operate in that reality. I'm from Finland. I do not have good instincts about how to operate in a reality. My instinct is like, the government is my friend, and I have to tell the truth at all times. That is not a good instinct, actually. I have to always follow instructions and rules, like laws are sacred. So I'm going to need to train myself to exist in a world where that might not be a good place of being. At the same time, I don't want to lose my trust in society, because that's one of the greatest protectors of democracy. I'm going to keep my trust, but I'm also not going to be an idiot, right? So there's some advice in this chapter about what we can do. Yes. We need to fight back, says Roman Paul again, against developments that could lead to more war or dictatorship. Working in mass media with the potential to reach so many people and influence them as much as film or series can, we have a part to play. We can initiate discussions and promote the values we have always stood for. We can inspire people to become active and feeling empowered in their hopefully liberal mindset and connected to each other. That's our responsibility. So again, in summary, in the next 3 to 5 years, either we resist democratic backsliding or we are implicated in it. There are no other alternatives. This choice is binary. We have to fight for editorial and artistic freedom. We have to fight against self-censorship, which is the most insidious of all. We have to resist hateful and populist framings of contentious issues. We have to proactively create policies, strategies, and tools now to protect individual employees and artists and partners who might be threatened or come to harm. This is true even if you're living in a completely democratic society. Populists organizing is international, and all of us can be attacked and harmed in different ways, and we have to have like professional systems for handling that, and we have to keep telling complex stories. The fourth chapter makes a couple of rather complex arguments that will sound incredibly simplified and dumb when I summarize them now. So I'm just asking for your patience and to like go back and read the big in this essay that I have written. So I'm going to start by saying that US content still dominates, of course, and American but global media giants will absolutely, or at least very likely, continue to be bigger and influential than at least the European challengers. Of course, the rest of the world might throw a few curveballs there as well. But even so, the cultural dynamic that is known as Americanization has been challenged for a while. And in case you're not familiar with the word, Americanization is the name for the impacts of USA's soft power experts since the Second World War, how that has changed cultures all around the world, especially I think in Europe. And for a number of reasons that have been undergoing for quite some time, this soft power has been challenged and undermined. So already it wasn't very strong, and now of course the political goodwill against the United States is currently depleting incredibly fast, and that has a huge soft power cost. It maybe would have worked anyway, but because it was already kind of undermined, I think we might see some radical impacts on that. It is quite possible that my generation, sort of the youngest Gen X, eldest millennials, might be the last generation in Europe that like willingly and automatically self-Americanized. It is not as automatically true for those who are younger, as Samia, who is Dutch, says here. When I was little, we wanted to go to do an American high school year. People don't want that anymore. You could be in a school shooting. And she talks about how growing up on the Disney Channel made her want to live in the United States, and she did for a while, and she says she's so happy she did because that is what made her a Dutch filmmaker. The ambition to make another country love me because I loved it faded away when I realized that country did not exist. And that's a really daunting reality that also the American film industry has to grapple with. So yes, US content still dominates, but its position as the sort of automatic norm of mainstream pop culture in the global north is a little bit wobbling in a way we haven't seen for a long time. And that position was created by a lot of economic structures of having more economic muscle, but that cultural position, like the sort of impact, the multiplier of their soft power was an important part of this as well. And in the chapter you can find a more sort of complex argument about mainstream film aesthetics as well. And the main challenger here, of course, has to do with social media. You can't maintain a fictional story when even the people who are living inside that fictional story are online the whole time telling another story, right? So the mainstream entertainment is shifting away from this sort of very generic aesthetic that I grew up with. And that means that opportunities are opening in the mainstream. And actually, we've also covered this in the report last year. I think it's worth reading if you're interested in this, that also for context, which looked about how this sort of authorial voice is sort of infiltrating mainstream storytelling, that we have author filmmakers making billion-dollar movies is now something we take for granted. But it's actually incredibly unusual that Greta Gerwig or Denis Villeneuve would make hits, or that Christopher Nolan would be like one of the most bankable directors, hit blockbuster directors in the world. It is insane that any Nolan movie is a blockbuster if you're from my generation. But we completely take that for granted now. So and then, of course, all the mainstream entertainment and television as well. A lot of it is becoming much more specialized and artistically advanced. That development is happening. But that development is very uncomfortable, especially for the US studios. Because historically, it was their economic incentive, because they made their money in the global market rather than at home. They had to make a very generic type of content that would work anywhere. You didn't need to know the United States. It's enough that you knew US pop culture, and you would be able to watch more US pop culture. And then, of course, in the last 10 to 15 years, the studios have also been incredibly incentivized to minimize risk. And that makes them veer toward, like, can we do more procedurals again? Like, can we bring back the mainstream? Yes, we can. There's an interest in that. But this other thing is also happening. And that tension inside the US industry is opening more opportunities for everyone else. European content has recovered better in Europe after the pandemic than American content. Art house has recovered better everywhere than mainstream content. This is very interesting for our maturing storytelling industries. And when I'm saying we can do more, does it mean that our content will do really well in the United States? Well, maybe not. But even there, I think, well, I mean, the rest of the world is a pretty big place. And even in the US, I think that there are definitely things happening. As Ted Miller says, historically, the American market just didn't ever buy foreign content. The US perspective even impacted the kinds of scripted series that were viable. You couldn't make The Diplomat before the streamers started making shows, because people didn't like shows that were set abroad. They didn't even like foreign accents, he says. That's why Hugh Laurie has to speak American in-house. Now it's very strange to think, but that was real, not that long ago. Most traditional US buyers develop their own content. They don't have the mandate. Like, there's nobody in these organizations whose job it is to go out and find the international titles. And you're kind of, when you're speaking to these executives, you're actually competing with their own projects. So there just isn't a mechanism. And Ted says it would be great if television had a lane similar to what we have in the independent and international film marketplace. You make a great independent film, you take it to Toronto or Berlin and Sundance, and people can buy it. And every May, the rest of the world comes to LA for the LA screenings for television, and then they buy the American shows. But there's nowhere for the American buyers to go to buy our shows. And here we can hopefully create change. So, in summary, yes, the normative role is shifting. Hollywood as a symbol is losing symbolic value as well. And Los Angeles as a production environment, of course, is receding. And I also think that even though right now the American companies, media companies, are kowtowing to Trump, as they must, I think locally for local political reasons, when the United States national project becomes a problem for them, if it becomes a brand liability, I think they will quietly decouple from their Americanness, at least in the international markets. Ultimately, they are not loyal to their government, they're loyal to their stockholders. And this means opportunities, especially for wide appeal storytelling from everywhere else. I will now drink a little water. Yes. So, adolescence comes up in every conversation. I think it's in the report like 13 times. But adolescence is important because every time we as an industry are surprised it's a clue that we didn't understand the audience. So let's think about what this means. Adolescence is made to educate, says Samia Hafsawi, to create empathy, to create understanding. It is a technical marvel, but it's made for the people. Sometimes filmmakers make technical marvels for their colleagues. Then don't be surprised that only your colleagues like it and the general audience does not. If you make a film for your colleagues or for the awards circuit and there is nothing wrong with that, then that is what it will be good at. Don't expect the general audience if you haven't thought about the general audience when you made your work. Our industry troubles and our political troubles have ultimately the same solution. The films that we make have to matter to people, even the people, as in not every person at every moment, but most of the people who live in our territories should have a positive, active, engaged relationship to content that is made in their territories. That is how we save cinema, that is how we save film as an art form, that is how we create and expand the taste for international content as well. All of this is necessary. It's also how we protect politically protect, or at least get closer to protecting funding. This is a more nuanced argument. You can, of course, read it in the report. But all of this can be boiled down to sort of three storytelling problems that we have. The first is that clearly our films, often even our commercial national films, but especially, let's say, the films that many of us in this room are invested in here in Cannes, they don't connect with large audiences. Sometimes it's a problem of the film, sometimes a problem of the connection, of like making the connection. We ourselves tell stories about the audience that are highly dubious. I don't have time to go into it right now, but there are many assumptions that we make that are just not borne out in the data. And again, every time a film like Adolescence, or like a show like Adolescence, or a film like Parasite, say, breaks out, it shows that we underestimated the audience again. To change this narrative of film in our countries, of people's relationship to film, of how our industry is perceived, we have to tell a story of what film means, but also of how films get made and how they are funded, and what is the role of tax money, or what is the role of the person who is paying for a movie ticket in that process. Nobody else will tell that story, so we're going to have to tell that story as well. That is to say, we are not going to solve this problem by just making more audience-relevant films. We're going to have to also, together, all of us, starting today, tell the story of why film is important. And actually, on the sort of institutional level, this has a little special twist, which is, and again, I'm summarizing Tamara's quote here a little bit, or like make it denser, but she says, funding cannot be a one-way road only of demands and entitlement. Filmmakers need to return advocacy for future talent, the appreciation of these efforts, and acknowledgement of the impacts. People who are advancing into their careers, and honestly, everyone, we need to understand that we're expected to contribute to building a sustainable future together. It's not automatic that our public cultural funding or even our automatic incentives will continue to exist. We have to tell the story of what they achieve. So, we must challenge our own narratives. We must transform perceptions in the wider culture. We have to learn how to talk about our work without sounding entitled or patronizing. Let's not say you wouldn't steal a car anymore, but let's remember that's how we have talked to the audience always. We can start by celebrating the love that we and the audience already share for film. Like, that is one thing that we have in common, no matter what, is that people love movies and we love movies. And I think that's the key. That's how we start having this conversation. Okay. So then, to get a little bit more practical, what this sort of entails, or all of the kinds of changes that we've talked about, and all of the kinds of things about rejiggering our audience relationship, requires us to think about the process of filmmaking a little bit differently. And historically, we have been very romantic. At Film West, my colleague Thomas Eskilsson, also a media analyst, a great industry analyst, always he calls it, we are the cinema paradiso romantics. we are very romantic about theatrical exhibition. It's true. I would say we are also film shoot romantics. When we think about film, the images you see in your mind is either a cinema or a film shoot. Like these are the alternatives. And that means that the part that happens before, like development, and everything that happens after the film is finished is basically invisible in our internal narratives, and this really needs to change. Ted Miller talks about how, and actually this whole chapter talks about how for very different cultural reasons we have very different problems with development in the US and Europe, but ultimately the results are similar. Some of the companies are very, very large. Decision makers involve a huge amount of people, and they often rely on sort of data and predictions of what has happened, what has worked before, and that does not empower the individuals who are making decisions to actually say, well, okay, this is new, but this will work. Like that has to, you can't do that with the data, so you have to empower humans to make that call. He says, you'll hear things like, we're reading internally, instead of, I'm going to make this happen, or I'm going to be the champion on the inside. And I think when we look at those surprise projects, the things that worked even though they shouldn't have worked, they have always had a champion on the inside. So this is for you decision makers out there. And here, on this side, we are better. In Europe, our systems are better at this. Marianne Furevold Boland at a Norwegian broadcasting company says, I worry that to maintain production, also because of economic dynamics, parts of the industry feel forced to compromise, not giving projects the time to have top-class scripts, and finding compromise solutions in post rather than smart solutions in development. And she says what is at sort of the heart of the whole chapter. We have to be smart about how we structure development processes. We need to know at each moment, what are we asking for? And we need to be sure that the writers and the producer, as she says, as a commissioner, are realistic. But as she also says, but that goes both ways. Everybody in the process has to be realistic about what is the artistic core, what is the audience, and how do we make the best artistic and impactful and engaging version for that. And in our development process, like what is the question we are currently answering and how do we show that we have? So all over the world, in all of our different processes, I don't know all the countries, but certainly in Europe and US generally, we develop too many projects, but we also develop too few projects. We develop them too fast, but we also develop them too long. Development is frustrating and it's often adversarial. When you get notes, it feels like you have an enemy instead of a creative partner. So that's not great. So we need to rethink this. The first thing is that we need to put back into the development process or make visible something that was always there, but that we could often skip. If you're making traditional film or TV, you didn't actually have to do this. It was like a 5-second exercise. Am I making a TV show? Yes. And then you could just skip that whole step. But now, actually, that's not how it's going to work. A project's content and its focus and its artistry, all the creative development, has to be developed in conversation with the project's business model and its audience design. Because the traditional funnels are getting smaller, harder to get into, a lot of projects will not get made in the traditional system, so they have to get made somewhere else. Who will develop that business plan? It's not going to be some other like industry or government. It's going to be you, project by project. That is how we do this. We have to think about creative development not as making gradual changes that make something better, but we have to think of it as testing the changes that we think will make it better. Like, what are my assumptions about what will make this aesthetically better, or what will connect it better with the audience, or what kind of advertising will work, or will the audience understand, whatever it is. Whenever we make a test, whenever you write a new script, this is what's going on. We're testing our assumptions. That should be the focus. And that will, of course, when you think about it, that changes the relationship to the people who give you notes, because now they are part of a test every time, right? Devising a meaningful test requires us to be explicit and specific about what needs proving or improving. What are we trying to improve? What are we trying to prove? And then we have to honestly discuss, for everyone in the project, how would we know whether that project was achieved? And when we really disagree, which sometimes we will truly disagree, it will be because we have different assumptions about the audience, like 9 times out of 10. And then we have to test on the audience, usually. Or we at least have to make visible, maybe there's like another underlying problem that the note is kind of pointing at, but can't ultimately address. A test can show that a DP is the right choice, that what it would cost to reach a specific kind of person, a specific market with advertising, and whether our artistic innovations make our audiences feel intelligent or dumb. There has maybe been a place for films that make the audience feel dumb. I don't think this is the time to do that because of all the things I have spoken of previously. If we are serious about film being an incredibly important and powerful medium that we have to reach out with our stories because what we're doing is so important that we're going to do it with tax money in Europe, then we have to at least make sure that we don't make the audience feel stupid. Let's make them feel intelligent so that we can tell these artistic and ambitious stories. So development must be less frustrating. It has to be better compensated. People who do development need to be paid in one way or another for that work. In this evolved development process that we will now all have starting today, a project's content, focus, and artistry are developed in conversation with its business model and audience design, always with testing at the core. And public investment in the development phase is a way of doing that work, supporting that work of business innovation and professional upskilling that we talk about in a lot of panels. Okay, and then the film is maybe done, or actually it isn't even done, but we still already need to communicate it. Marianne says, I don't feel at the moment we're taking publishing, marketing, and release strategies seriously enough, and I hear the same from all my broadcaster colleagues. Yeah, broadcasters don't have the budgets for traditional marketing, but what else can we do, she asked. We have to work within our means, maybe learning from documentary film that is really good at this and has never had any money, let's be real. And Samia Hafsawi says, the way we market things now, with a bus stop, with a poster at a bus stop, or a bit in a talk show whose average audience is over 60 years old, this is far from your target audience. You have to come towards them. And if you only come towards them when you have something to sell, that is a very cold relationship. So there are basically, this chapter talks about how there are basically three ways of connecting a piece of content with the audience. You can market your way into a cultural moment, maybe. I'm doubting that a little bit. Go there for a discussion of that. You can build engagement over time, or you can engage in an existing community. Projects come and go, but relationships take time. And that means that it's actually not very resource efficient to do this project by project if you're a small company. Building that, like a relationship, obviously, is trust and credibility. That's what makes it valuable. So building the trust and credibility for an artistic voice or for a curatorial brand, like for a distributor, for instance, or even a production company, might be more sustainable. This is certainly also true for cinemas. And the most important thing to have with you, because what we're talking about, obviously, a lot is social, because that's where communication is now, or like online in different ways. You are not targeting consumers with a marketing message. That has to go. Well, yes, you can do that. There's a marketing message in the traditional marketing. It says, now, 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 buy now, go now, now is the premiere. That's a marketing message. Everything else that you do, you're not selling a marketing message. Even the fans of existing things are not people you are selling this content to. They are people you are hoping will sell that content to others. They are your ambassadors. You want them to work for you. That means that this social relationship that you have with your audiences, that is the investment into them using their social capital to create a moment and their time to create a moment for your project. And we'll get back to this in a moment, but Katarina made a very good point here that the festival run of a film can be, or even a festival premiere of certain types of more niche films can be bigger than its whole number of admissions in its local market. So we have to think about how to, for instance, when it comes to art house films, use that festival window well. I've said all these things, so I will now get to the epilogue. Yes. So in case this all comes across as a little bit daunting and depressing, I did put in a chapter at the end called Wonderful Things That Work. It just reminds us that we are, in fact, in a fantastic moment of film and television right now. Yes, wonderful things that work. So Murad Koufan of France Television said, this year at Series Mania, I said to Frédéric Lavigne, who curates the selection WTF, not a single show I would not buy. such high quality, so impactful, so well written and well acted. I returned to work with a heart full of hope. All of the shows were wonderful, but they were all sad. You cry and cry. It was wonderful. Roman's projects have to be entertaining. I don't believe in boredom. They should always be aesthetically interesting and socially relevant. We talked about adolescence again, and he says people are not afraid of tragedy as long as it resonates with them, as long as it's about something they deeply care about. And it's important to make it unexpected, something that surprises even yourself. And of course, also a larger point that is being made here over and over again is that since the pandemic, like we've had this flourishing in the last 20 years of TV drama, but since the pandemic, all the great artistic gestures have happened in the cinema, and now maybe the TV series is catching up a little bit again. But the great things are happening in both places, in the traditional media formats, but also in the new formats. And Murad also reminds us that the third episode of Adolescence is great, great television. It's one table, two chairs, two actors. You don't need 20 million euros for that. If you want to make Kabul or the Count of Monte Cristo, you need money, of course. But the most potent VFX is still a close-up on a face. And he reminds us that Sean Baker, who directed Anora, made Tangerine, which competed here 10 years ago, on 3 iPhones. And I'll tell you that an iPhone 10 years ago is not an iPhone today. But if you have 5 of today's iPhones, just imagine, you can make a TV show or a film. As Murad says, you don't need me, you don't need a broadcaster, you need your imagination. And finally, the final quote in the report is this: I don't think making a commercial film is about making something lazy or vapid for mass consumption, says Samia Hafsawi. I will fight tooth and nail for people to understand that how you make money is by finding something that a big group of people love. People go to the Minecraft movie because they love Minecraft. People watch Adolescence because they love their children, their daughter, their sister, and it specifically scares them to lose the people they love to hatred. Their sons as well, in fact, same thing. And people see the theatrical re-release of Pride and Prejudice in huge numbers because they love love. So, in this moment, if we genuinely believe, as I think we're doing, Khan, that storytelling is important, our work needs to resonate more deeply with more people more often. And it needs to resonate with different people, not just our core audiences of artistic cinema. This is also how this industry becomes financially independent and politically independent, and how it becomes resilient financially and socially and politically. We have to stop resisting reality. We have to stop resisting this insight that nobody else will do this for us, so that we can do it ourselves and that we can provide real resistance where it really counts. I believe we can, so do our interviewees. Thank you. This is where you find the report. Please share it with your friends. Thank you. Without further ado, please welcome the panelists. And I think, come to the stage, come. And I think possibly,
Hello.
Hello. Okay. So we are being reminded that we have a limited amount of time, so and we just need to solve all the problems of the world. On my right, in this panel, which I have taken the liberty of organizing, let's not call it a panel, let's just say we're having a conversation. I think that's already better. Yes. Hi, Tamara. With me is Katarina Tomkova from Kaleidoscope and Punk Heart Film, yes, and Roman Paul from Razor Film. 2 producers who have the breathing space to participate here, even though we're at Cannes. I'm very grateful for that. Just very top of mind, how's your Cannes? Have you noted, how has it been, and how has the vibe been, Roman? Are you
a speechless producer?
Yeah.
The vibe has been very good. I think in general, coming here, I feel is such a privilege, even if one has a bad year, because the event itself is always in connection with the year that you had and the year that you're having.
Yeah.
But in bad years, when you do not get many projects off the ground, or they were not as successful as you were hoping for, or you fighting really uphill battles, then this place here gives me a lot of hope and energy. It takes me out of a depression, because Cannes is for me life in a nutshell. It's it's been an experience that I always dreamt of, at least to come here once. Now I can come here regularly for quite a long time, actually, and it is an absolute privilege. And to meet fantastic colleagues, to see amazing work of arts. They don't have to be perfect, but they have to be interesting. And to see other people put all their passion, time, money into it is such a boost of energy. So every Cannes that I can come is for me a good Cannes. So
yeah, and
this
it's
year as
interesting
well.
that you also said that it's a relatively good vibe, because I felt the last 2 years we have been a little bit like sort of shell-shocked by, well, I mean, also by of course by the war, the invasion of Ukraine was shocking in a way that was like reality rattling, but also everything that's been happening in the film and television markets, and those two things. It felt like we are now being able to breathe a little bit and look forward. What's your takeaway, Kathleen?
So before I start, I just wanted to thank you, Johanna, for the keynote just here, because not only admiring your intellectual capacity to put all of the quotes in context, but also your courage to step up for things that matter. That touched me deeply when you started this talk, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Yes. And it's exactly conversations like those that for me make a good Cannes, exactly as probably as Roman also mentioned, that the vibe is very supportive and collegial towards each other. On the plane here, I actually met several people that came to Cannes for the first time, so it filled me with hope. You know, there's a new generation of filmmakers and film professionals that have that curiosity and want to have these conversations, if not to sell a film or launch a film or have a film in the official program, then to just connect and talk. And I think that you probably know that when we had our talk, for me, the dialogue and kind of the empathy were the tag words. So I'm very happy that I see it happening all around me. So that is my Cannes vibe.
Neither of you have had the opportunity to read the whole report yet, and it is also long. I do apologize to everyone for that. But you've now had this like huge info dump of the core case that somehow the audience, again, still is the answer. But there are all of these like wider implications, both in our processes and maybe in our hearts and our art, about how to address that. And I know it's a lot. So just like the random thing is what's top of mind from what we've been talking about this morning.
It's resilience, not to give in to depression and to stay quiet, but to stay true to yourself and to your values. To question yourself, also how to strategize in challenging times, and really depending on where you come from in very difficult political circumstances, and also to listen to others, how they maneuver in systems that are oppressive. Very, very often we mistake every person coming from a certain country that has an oppressive dictatorial regime to be in line with that. But that is not true. And then you need to listen and understand, how do people operate under such a system? Because not everybody can leave, and also not everybody should leave. And to support people who fight a very, very difficult fight, who try to make things happen under circumstances that put their lives in danger. This is something that is very, very important, and we need to empower each other, and we need to be courageous to do that.
Yeah, Katarina.
So when I was listening to panel discussions, sorry, Tamara, a few years back, I felt like the leading subject. I'm going to take it from a further way. Please, bear with me. I do have a point. You know, we were talking a lot about AI and how AI can influence or impact humans, or make them unsafe or be worrying to humans. But in the last years, my feeling is that it's not actually AI, it's humans themselves are, something that the other humans should be worrying about. And of course, I don't have a solutions of what to do with it. I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm probably going to do this. I'm going to quote Patricia Arquette's character from Severance. No spoilers, don't worry. Where in the first episode, and I'm paraphrasing this, her character says there's good news and bad news about hell. Good news is that hell is a made-up concept. Bad news is whatever humans can make up, they usually can make. Yeah. And I feel in a way that we are in that situation worldwide. And of course, I don't really have the tools to fix it in a heartbeat. But for me, it will always be about standing up and having the dialogue and trying to make an impact. And as you said, everybody has different tools for doing that. And we should not beat ourselves up because everybody has a different sensibility of how to do that. In my case, this is telling stories that I really believe in, really telling stories that make other people understand another person's perspective, and opening that horrible polarization that I really feel also very present in my country, and possibly countries all around Europe. So for me, supporting this dialogue in terms of an artistic statement in films that I make and lean towards to, or support other filmmakers from other countries, I think I will return a little bit to what Roman was saying, that, and probably you've seen the comparisons between equality, where two people stand of different heights, stand on the same standpoint, and equity, where you put the one that is not so tall on a higher level. And I think this is the way for me to go forward and to find systems of support and solidarity and empathy between us filmmakers.
Yeah, I will first say that I will not judge a quote from Severance when I myself open my writing in the report with a Terminator 2 quote. So, but it has a point. I'm just leaving this as a teaser. You can go and read the first page and see if it grabs you. But it's also interesting because now both of you were talking about polarization. I think it's and prejudice. I think it's really important. Yes, as you say, also Roman, that there might be these ideas about how people from a certain country, what they believe. Also, if they have fled, then suddenly you become a refugee, and then that comes with this idea of a loss of agency, and so on. And that's also not like a helpful way of meeting our colleagues or our audiences. And then I should say that it's also mentioned in the report. Now it's written from a perspective that the people who are writing this report and who are most of those who are reading it don't share the values of the populist politicians. But populism is popular, and we can't assume that all of the people we work with wouldn't vote for a populist. That doesn't mean they're evil. This is much more complicated than that. And if we want to speak to wide audiences, we have to somehow crack through this sort of prejudice and polarizing narratives and say, well, there are things we have in common, and there are things that are universal, and people are individual, and how do we engage with that somehow? I don't know how to do it, but I guess it's naive to think that film and TV is how we can do that.
I think I agree with you. Maybe it's the naivety of me being in this business, but for me that was always a dialogue, and I know that I myself have changed my opinion, with watching films. Then again, let's not. I don't want to implicate that it's only artistic cinema or art house cinema that can do this job. Actually, that there are many types of and formats of. I'm trying to avoid the term entertainment because it usually has a negative connotation. It's something that is meaningless. I don't really mean that. I think that, they're powerful, audience-friendly dramas that can be really impactful. So I do think that it is a tool that we can use to have that dialogue.
I learned from an audience designer here in Cannes that when you do audience studies, even audiences who have just seen like a powerful art house film, when you ask, was it entertaining? They will check, yes, it was entertaining. So okay. There's also something of the entertainment can mean engaging. It can mean it's something that it was worth spending your time on, and that you got something from that is also entertaining. So we shouldn't be afraid of the word in that sense, for sure. Roman, what are you thinking?
Well, entertainment is key. There are also films about entertainment. I was very happy to see Oliver Lash film Sirat, which is about, you know, first raving and a pure hedonistic experience of dancing, taking drugs, having a great time in the desert, and then it turns into something else. And you see the connection between entertainment and existence. It's part of it. And it's also part of this experience where we are right now. I mean, I find it still kind of weird. You see the most depressing circumstances in a film here on screen. You stumble out into a sunny place where at one corner or the other someone will serve you champagne for free. And you're like, no, day number 5 of champagne, I can't drink it anymore. And you catch yourself saying, wait a minute, okay? So entertainment, I think, is part of our lives. It's a key element, and we also need to always think about that this is something wonderful that we're trying to do, that we're trying to get off the ground. And we need to keep in mind, and it's not even we need to keep in mind, because that's already contrary to what I'm trying to say. We need to embrace the joy that is inherent in it. We need to embrace the joy. We need to embrace the freedom of the artistic process, and all fine with concept. But it is about human interactions and creating things, not destroying things.
You just made me understand something really important, because a word we use very often is difficult. Oh, this is a difficult project to get off the ground. This is a difficult project for the audience. Oh, this was a difficult film to see. What if every time we use the word difficult, we replace it with wonderful? Like you said, we're trying to do something wonderful. This is a wonderful project. This is a wonderful challenge. This is a wonderful film to see. It's a wonder that I survived this film. You know, I wonder what would happen in our minds if we did that. I'm really looking at the time. We need to talk about the practical things, as I have promised as well. So communicating a film has to start early, and it has to continue through the lifetime of the project. Same for TV, but let's talk film. And that means the producer has to own the project design and own the sort of strategy level of both the sort of communication and the distribution of the project, and that's part of built into everything from the start. And if it's the kind of film that will not have a long commercial life, then you will also kind of own often the distribution, maybe even as soon as after the festival circuit. If you've been unlucky, then you know that's also to you. How do you as producers approach the fact that suddenly you have to be not just the producer but also a kind of studio head for every film, every project you have? Do you already work that way? What are you?
Yeah, we're today last day of shooting for a film that we're making. And the making of thing is over, as we all know, and with the distributor we decided to produce content for TikTok. It's set in a university in Germany. It's about a woke scandal, and what we decided to do is we have short TikTok clips from people involved in the production, people also with a POC background, a BPOC background, all kind of positions in a film, who is doing what. That is very, very short, and it will add, because it's based on a bestseller, to build up the whole experience. And while we were sitting here, I was thinking about, like, how about we make now the whole process just kind of transparent? Like, hey, we're handing in for a festival, we're waiting, let's see how that goes. Yeah. And just take people on the ride of making a film, instead of, oh, we add to the characters that are in the film. I don't want to interfere with the fiction too much, but I would like to shed a little light on the people behind it. It's interesting because our work is to make that disappear. Mm-hmm. Okay, like rarely do we see how the lights are there, or it's a fictional world that we are creating. And also here, we are creating a fictional world for the rest of the world. I get texts like, Roman, enjoy the champagne, the oysters, and and the sun. And that's from people who have nothing to do with our world. That's from back home. And I think, yeah, they are right. That's definitely not all that we're doing here, but explaining then feels also like.
But it used
useless.
to have a value as well, and it doesn't. But now I think maybe it has more value that we post more pictures of those incredibly depressing sandwiches in plastic that we eat so much of. Katarina, how are you thinking about this? And maybe you also want to connect this to this topic of the festival window that we talk about in the report.
Yes. So for me, the keyword here would be honesty. And I feel that we are a little bit jittery when it comes to being very open where my target audience is, because I sometimes worry I cannot say, oh, I'm doing this very niche film for, festival audience, because that might mean like, oh my God, that means like the film will have no audience at all. And then again, I'm worried to say like, no, it will have a great impact and a lot of people will come to see it, because I worry that the festival programmers will think, oh, that's like the audience film. It's not, an art house film for a program. So, but eventually at the end of the day, and this is something that I always tell to my participants and students and people who I'm trying to give advice to, is this very brutal honesty, because I'm not, yes, it sometimes happens, but I'm not sure we can do both. Or, I know that there are some films that are crossovers that are doing excellently on the festival circuit, and then they are having huge box office in, many countries. But it usually is not the case. And I think that to be brutally honest in what your film is and where is its audience, it's going to just make your journey to that audience quicker and more efficient. In my case, this is the art house audience, and this is where I'm going. And my quote was here, where this is very true, that the film that I worked on its first festival screening, which was Berlinale, where we had 4 screenings, full cinemas, was higher than the actual national theatrical distribution number. So when I think of my films, my audience, I don't see locally, I see it internationally. I know that these are the people that will buy their accreditation because they're cinephiles to festivals. They will be concentrated around the hubs of art house cinemas in their countries, in their cities. They would sometimes even, I really admire the work of some festivals that are curated, so they would travel around the country and take a part of their program into smaller cities. So I know that this is exactly where my audience is. And of course, when we have social media managers on Facebook, I could immediately know where the film has been screened, because messages pop up on the fan page of the film telling us we love the film, we are from that and that country.
You mentioned that the festival screening numbers are not collated anywhere, and this is a huge problem that we really need to address, because that is a window, that's like a parallel window system for a certain type of film. And I think what we need to do often is that, because if the film doesn't get this big breakthrough, and very few films do, even the big A festival winners don't always get that big breakthrough, then it won't be picked up and be like automatically show up in my local art house. But that's also like an old world mindset. We're thinking that you have to have the big cultural moment for an art house film to be successful. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, yeah, for a wider breakthrough, but if what we're talking about is you just need to find the right 2,000 people in every territory, then it's just not rational to try to go through the big thing. You go straight for those 2,000. And here, the festival audience is key. The festival audience, the professional audience, and the cineast audience will go on Letterboxd and write the reviews, and the other cineasts will see it there. And we, I think, and you as producers are lacking the tool of like translating, like making legible and translating the festival successes into the next window, or into like a longer life outside the cinemas for these films. So they just disappear. And this feels addressable, I think.
And simply numbers, because the numbers are not collected anywhere. So there's not numbers that I could actually operate with and use them for my further funding applications or for reporting of my project. So I really
and for arguing for cultural policy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I fully agree. Right now, most festivals worldwide, though, start to pay fees. The days are a bit over of, oh, sorry, we have no money, which is true for many events. But still, you should somehow share if you're not for free. Where was I? Oh, God, I'm tired. I lost my thread.
We're talking somehow about translating these audiences into, like, giving the films communicating with the film for its longer life, ultimately. No?
And finding the 2000s in every
Yeah,
country.
finding the right audiences in every market. Again, we talk about it practically in the report. You can go look for that. I think what I will do is I will ask another question, and then you will immediately
now I know
go.
what I wanted to say. Sorry about this. But people flood more and more to festivals.
Yes.
Festivals are getting more and more around the world, and I think there's a shift in how people interact with films. They are in a totally different mode when they go to a festival, like us. 8:30 in the screening. What's this film about? I don't know. I got a ticket for it. I go. You're kind of like more open, more forgiving, and more willing to be surprised, and also see like a whole bunch of films in one row. And that is an event. And people have to do that also on a smaller local level. For them, it's the same thing. And so I think that the rise in the number of festivals is a great thing. But we also need to become part of that, because so many times you read in the trade reviews also, oh, this is a film for the festival circuit. So the festival circuit is an economical factor, and we need to figure that out a bit better than we already do. I'm not saying that we don't.
I'm not saying this just because my work is funded by a festival, but this is really interesting. We do have a weird narrative, again, in the industry. Another weird narrative is that the A festivals are very important, and the others are, well, they're just local festivals. Wow, no, but like for a lot of films, that is the only chance to build a huge, passionate audience, and it's a financially significant window as well for many films, and it has that international representation impact. So again, if we change, what do we put in the middle of the frame? If we say, well, the festival window, we put that in the middle of the frame. We say, how do we leverage our festival window to build those audience relationships? I think we're starting to get better answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have another example, possibly 5 last seconds. Okay.
Yeah, no, go.
And it's an example. I had a film in Venice. We were very lucky to win the Europa Cinemas label. And that was the first time that I understood the power of also cinema exhibitors and their interest directly to the films that are screened on the festival circuit, because of course that was the beauty of getting that award, that we were directly put into attention of all of the members of Europa Cinemas. But suddenly we got to territories where normally we probably wouldn't get with this tiny little film. So I felt that I really, for the first time probably, I directly felt that impact and that interest and that desire to really watch these films. So
I will ask a final question, and you will promise to try to answer it briefly so that they don't get sad in the tech booth and the next speakers either, which is, we have to turn our talk into action. So my question is, what is one thing, big or small, tiniest or huge, that you will do, and what is one thing that you would like somebody else to do?
Somebody else is the receipts, okay? Really bad at that.
No, I mean somebody else. What is a change you would like somebody else to make in the industry? Oh. But yes, okay, also they can do your receipts while they're at it.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Anna. This is an easy
On the
one.
spot, I didn't warn you either, I just thought of it. I mean, because Roman you said one already, which is maybe talk in a different way, show how the sausage is made. That's the way to build a relationship online.
Implement more dialogue among each other, not replacing one prejudice and one form of racism with another, but opening up to each other without less bias. This is something that I would hope for, that I'm also trying to work on myself, and this is something that I would like to implement everyone.
That's fantastic. Yes, let's do that.
I will use your idea, Johanna. Instead of saying that I have a difficult film to sell, I will start saying I have a wonderful film to sell.
Let's do that. And for all of you, of course, we're assigning homework here. You will also do that, and you will read the report and share it with your friends. And you will start talking with everyone you know about how wonderful film is and what we can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.